going to talk about how to plan an opinion unit right the way through from the beginning to the end. Now, I'm going to tell you about my way. You might be different, but this will just give you an idea and get you thinking about how you can do this with your class. Whenever I plan an English unit, I usually set it up into phases. There's usually 3 phases, although sometimes 4, and sometimes I put the first 2 phases together. So phase 1 is planning, phase 2 is writing, and phase 3 is editing. So they have the whole concepts of the text they're going to create. I also include in the planning phase a bit about getting to know text, because if they're going to write opinion text, they need to recognise it. So we do lots of reading in the first phase, we do lots of thinking about the type of text that we're going to use, and we also talk a lot about the points in a text and how we're going to know this and things like that. I'm going to go into more detail about this. I'll break it down lesson by lesson. We're going to look at each phase, each week, each day lesson. And because the way that I plan these, my current opinion text unit only has 3 weeks. Sometimes they have 4, sometimes they have 2. It depends how much I want to cover. But this one has 3 weeks of lessons, which is 15 lessons, one for each day of the week. We're going to be working from this lesson plan, which you can download. I will give you the link. And I will show you the resources that I'm using as well. So we're going to go through each phase, each week, each lesson. Let's get started. So our very first lesson, week 1, lesson 1, phase 1, right at the beginning, we want to introduce them to opinion writing texts. So the learn objective for this lesson is recognising opinion writing. So we're going to have a nice starter where we discuss the words fact and opinion and what do they mean. We'll brainstorm as a class, talk to their partners, discuss together, think about what do we think a fact is, what do we think an opinion is. We collect the ideas and we have 2 separate sheets of paper up and we write the class ideas, what's a fact, what's an opinion. This is our starter. This just gets them thinking, gets them interested in what they're going to be doing. Then for the main lesson, we're going to use a PowerPoint like this and explain the difference between facts and opinions. What's a fact, what's an opinion, how are they different? We're going to discuss how to recognise an opinion in the text, how to recognise facts in the text. We're going to explain why it's important that we know the difference between an opinion and a fact when we're reading text. Then we're going to work together as a class to complete the class exercise. And this class exercise will be to, these are sheets, you can grab these, I will put the link. These sheets are just a quick exercise on how to recognise if something's a fact or an opinion. Then we're going to move on and we're going to do it ourselves, independently. They're going to recognise fact and opinion in the text. They're going to see if they can do it, if they can't, how they're going to do it. Then we're going to draw the class back together and we're going to mark the exercise together as a class. We're going to discuss any misconceptions. We're going to talk about any issues they had. We're going to talk about any examples they can think of themselves that had fact or opinion in the text. This is a very easy, gentle, easing them into the unit lesson. I do this kind of thing just to get them a feel for the texts, the type of things we're going to do. And then we move on. So, still in our first phase, in our first week, lesson 2, we're going to understand the parts of opinion writing. This is where they start to actually read the texts. They start to look at opinion texts themselves. So we start by reading 2 texts quietly. We give them a little bit of time just as a starter. So they're going to read through the texts. They're going to look at them with their partners and independently. And then as a class, we're going to discuss the text. We're going to talk about, I'm referring to these plans. As I said, you can grab these for free. We're going to talk about the text, talk about the parts, what were their opinions on the text, and we're going to make notes on small whiteboards together. This is just a starter to get the class warmed up. Then in the main lesson, we use the PowerPoint again, and we're going to discuss the things that are similar in the 2 texts. What things are the same, and which things are different. And what we notice in both texts that gives us a bit of a clue that they're opinion texts. And then we use the PowerPoint still. We're going to, as a class, discuss what a toolkit means. So they're going to talk about what is a toolkit. Can we use a toolkit in our writing? Things like that. Then, as a class, you're going to start making a toolkit. Now, in my resource pack, you will have example toolkits and sheets for them to work on. Toolkit is really just a way of saying, not a list, but a collection of things that they will need to write their own text. And because you're giving examples and writing frames, it's going to be a lot easier for them to write their own. So they write their own toolkit and they think about all the things that they want to put into their text. Draw the class back together, and then we're going to compare toolkits and make our own, a big class toolkit for when we start to write our text. Remember, this is part of the planning phase. They need to recognise parts of text, why they are important, and think about the different things that are going to go into their opinion text before we move on to writing. So we're still in phase 1, which is the planning phase. Let's move on to lesson 3. So then we're going to move on to our third lesson in our first phase in our first week. And this is going to be about selecting the topics they're going to write about. So as a starter, I'm going to pull them all together. They're going to discuss in pairs the opinions that they have on topics. We're going to talk about the things that they think are important. We're going to discuss things that they think would make a good topic. Talk about topics they think are interesting, which things they like, and each child, either on paper or on small whiteboards, can write a short list of topics that they think they would like to write about. This is really early on. We're very planning stage, so don't need to worry about it. Just grabbing ideas. Now, we're moving into the main lesson. We're going to use the PowerPoint again, and we're going to discuss different types of topics. How do we know that it's a good topic? Is it something that we could write about? We're going to brainstorm as a class different kinds of topics. And there's also, in my resource pack, there's a list of possible ideas. Then you're going to send them off independently to use the frame and write about their ideas. Not in detail. This is very much I might write about this because it's a good argument because this and this and this and this. No detail, just brainstorming ideas, grabbing things they could possibly write in their text. Finally, we'll draw the class back together and share our ideas, have a discussion, talk about why some of the points aren't great, why some of them are really good, that kind of thing. We're going to talk about how they can actually do this. This is why it's quite important to have a planning phase in your teaching. Then we're going to move on to lesson 4. So, lesson 4, still in the planning phase. We're going to talk about organising and planning ideas. In this lesson, we start with the children in pairs. And they're going to discuss the topic that they chose last lesson. They can explain what it is to their partners, and their partners try to remember their main argument. The reason we do this is because they need to really listen. Children have a tendency to just wait for their turn to speak. Adults do as well, unfortunately. So it's a good idea in this starter to let them listen to their partner and remind them, don't make it a surprise, remind them that after they finish listening to their partner, they're going to feed back to the rest of the class what their partner's opinion text is about, what their main argument is. This forces them to actually listen, which is really great. That's our starter. Moving into the main lesson, we're going to use the PowerPoint again, and we're going to explain structure. We're going to explain the structure of opinion text, how it works, the organisation of ideas, and why that is really important. Use the PowerPoint to guide you. I'm going to talk about the 3 levels of opinion writing, how each level has its own feed into the next level, and how they're going to learn how to do this. The topic, they're going to talk about the argument that they're making, like the reasons for that topic, and the support or evidence for those reasons. There are 3 layers to each text. As the class complete these things and they understand what's going on. So, now as a group, everyone together, you're going to complete the worksheet as an example. The worksheet's given to you. And as an example, you'll complete the text. They don't have to do it exactly the same as you. You're just showing them how it will work. Then they will move off and independently do their own worksheets with their own planning of the text. This is really important. This is a really important lesson in the phase of planning, because this is where they're really starting to think about how they're going to break down their ideas, how they're going to get their work there ready, and they're going to have this as a base for when they write their text. We move on to the final lesson of the first week, And this is real planning. This is where we're going to take everything we've done all week and put it into a solid plan for a real piece of text. So in this one, we have a fun little starter where you'll give them the sheet. There's no prep involved in this. We give them the sheet, you cut it up, they cut it up. Or you, it's up to you, it depends how much you prefer the mess. And they have to work out what order the parts of the text go in. We're going to do this as a starter, order the text, figure it out. When it's in an order, we can read it through. We work together and say, is this how this text is meant to read? Does it read well? What do we like about it? What do we not like about it? And how do we know that it goes in this order? Now, this is a really good time to start talking about connecting words and transition words. The words that they can use in their text to signpost and let readers know that this is the next point. This is the next chapter. This is the final chapter. You can use all the information given to you to point out the different parts of the text. And even if you like, as a class, you can list the transition words you'd like to use for yours. Moving into the main lesson, we now use the PowerPoint again. And we talk about how we're going to plan out our paragraphs within our text. Talk about the points, the important point of covering opposing views. You have to include other people's opinions, even if they're different to yours. This is really important to learn early on, because sometimes they feel an opinion text should just be about them and what they think. Work as a class and write the plan for an opinion text using the structures given. You've got structures given. And work how you're going to plan your text. Planning is the most important part before they start to write. Send them individually to write their own plans for their opinion text, the topic that they chose. When you come back, look again at the starter activity, the cut up pieces of text. Does it match the way that they've planned out theirs? Is it better? Is it worse? Is it just different? Talk about these things, because not every text has to follow the same structure, but it does need to make sense in the flow. That's the end of the first week. As we move into the second phase, the writing phase, the week 2 writing phase, this is where they really use their plans from the previous week. That's why it's important we don't skip the planning, because they need to know how to get to this point. So we're going to start in week 2, lesson 1. They're going to start by writing the lead sentence, something to grab them. Now, in my resources pack, there's videos. You're going to watch the videos of the people presenting, and you're going to look at their very first line, very short snippets of a few of different presenters, and you look at the very first line they say. And you're going to be really interested to hear if it's a grabbing line that makes them interested. Talk as a class about why they liked certain parts of the video, why they didn't, which bits made them sit up and pay attention, and which bits didn't. This is the lead, this is the grabbing part. This is where you get your reader's attention and you make them want to read more. So as a starter, it's a good idea to have fun little video and nice little exercise. Moving into the main, again, use the lesson point, the PowerPoint provided for the lesson, and discuss how different things in the video the presenters did well, and how we can now use that in our writing. Explain why you need to grab the reader's attention. This is really important. They need to know that people aren't just going to read the text because they have written it. You need to make people interested in your writing. Practice examples in the PowerPoint, and turn your opinion planning into a good lead sentence. Independently, they're going to go off, they're going to use the worksheets again that are provided, and they're going to use the worksheets provided, and they're going to go off and they're going to write their own lead sentences. Pull the class back together, share some of their attention-grabbing sentences, give each other feedback, remind the class on the importance of being kind when giving feedback. Moving on to lesson 2, week 2 of our opinion unit. The learning objective for this lesson is how to state your opinion. So we've had a lead. We've started off with a big lead in our paragraphs. Now we need to state what our opinion actually is. Tell the reader exactly what's going to happen in this text. So as a starter, we do how do we tell people what we think? The most obvious would be, I think that, and then our opinion. But see if you can get the class to come up with imaginative ways to do this. I believe, it's quite a nice one. In my opinion, You can go even further than that. You can get them to think about different things that they could say to point out to the class that this is their opinion. Now, you're going to use yesterday's lesson about how to grab attention, and you're going to talk about how we can work with that to move on to increase the interest. So we've grabbed their attention, we've got them interested, but we need to keep them interested. So now we're going to talk about how you can state your opinion in an easy to follow way. Use the PowerPoint, discuss what an opinion statement means, how best to use it, use the opinion prompt sheets, and talk about how they can do this. Then send them off, get them to write their opinion statements, again using the sheets. They're guided by the sheet, they can write their opinion statements. Bring them back together. Share the different opinion statements in pairs, share them as a class, and if you have time, it's a really good idea to get them to start their lead statement and follow it with their opinion statement to see how they gel together, see how they flow. Moving on to lesson 3 in week 2. We're getting there. This is where they write their introduction. Now they're going to, in this one, you get 3 introductory paragraphs to read that will show them different types of introductions. As a class, you can read them, or they can read them independently. And then they can talk about what they liked, what they didn't, and see if they can find in the introductions the things they've already learned. Have they spotted the lead, the grab? Have they spotted the stating of their opinion? These kinds of things. Then we move into the main lesson. They use the PowerPoint to explain some more about introductions, how to finish them. Even though we've got our first 2 sentences, there's more to say. Right, practice as a class writing out a full introduction as a shared write. Take ideas from them, write them on the board, take some more ideas, discuss what bits we could change. Write out their full introduction, use the sheets to support them, send them off to work on their own introductions. And as a plenary, have them come back and read aloud introductions if they want to. Don't put pressure on children to do this. It can be very upsetting. That's our lesson 3. Moving on to lesson 4 in week 2. This is where we write topic sentences. Now, this is where we're moving away from the introduction into the body of the text. And we're going to talk about paragraphs. So, again, you can give some example paragraphs to the children and say, this is what our paragraphs include. Have a read. Tell me what you think. Ask them to work in pairs to decide the point each paragraph is making. There's a fun little exercise included in the resource pack which gives a paragraph without a topic sentence. They can guess what the topic sentence is and fill it in. In the main lesson, discuss as a class how we felt about the example paragraphs. Did we feel that anything was missing? Use the lesson PowerPoint, explain topic sentences, why they are important, why they're needed. Talk about how we will write a topic sentence. Send children to work in pairs on their example paragraphs and write a topic sentence for each. If that doesn't make sense, what I mean is the sheets have example paragraphs and they need to find a good topic sentence to cover them. It's just a way to practice how to write a good sentence without constantly focusing on the text that they are working on at the moment. Bring the class back together, share the ideas, and independently write topic sentences with the children. Discuss again the importance of topic sentences. Use flip chart paper to remind the children of how we should do this. And then the last lesson in week 2, they're going to write the body of the text. So they've got their topic sentences, they've already done, they've done it all, it's all planned and ready. They've written their topic sentences, they've written their introduction. Now we need to put a proper body of text into this plan, into this topic structure. So you're going to read some more opinion texts, which are included in my... Again, you don't need to have my resources. You can do this all yourself. It's just this pack is there to help you if you want to. So you're going to read the example opinion text from week 1 and 2. And you're going to think about how they structure their body of text. As a class or independently, they can highlight the transition words in the text. You're going to use the PowerPoint to discuss structure of the paragraphs and the text. And you're going to remind the children that paragraphs have only one topic. There's no need to include lots and lots of things in one paragraph. One topic in detail. Send the children off to draft their main paragraphs. This is the main body of work that they're going to do for their text. And that's the end of week 2. In the plenary, you could always go back to the example text from the starter and see if there's any words that were missing, any that were wrong. Now that they've written some of their own text, how do they feel about it? Generally, I don't have time for that in this lesson because it's quite jam-packed. We move into week 3. Now, week 3 is still in phase 2. It's still in the writing phase. We're not into the editing phase just yet. But lesson 1 of week 3 is writing the body of text, continued. So we're doing the same thing we did last week. They've had a bit of a break. They're coming back. They probably haven't finished writing it. So as a starter, we read back through the work we did in the last lesson last week and discuss how we feel this writing is going. Have we included stuff? Have we followed our plan? How is it going? And really help support them as they start to write the body of the text in detail. Sometimes that break between the end of last week and the beginning of this one is a little bit difficult to get their minds back into it. So it takes a bit of warming up, which is why reading the text is quite nice. Recap on the last lesson's PowerPoint, use it again, talk about and ensure the children are happy with their progress. And are they using their topic sentences and their plans they've made? Because sometimes you can get sidetracked and you have all these plans, but you just write off the cuff, which isn't going to help them. So allow them time to do that. As a plenary, give them time to share their text. They should now have an introduction and a body of text. So week 3, still in phase 2, lesson 2, we're going to write a conclusion. Now, in the conclusion, as a starter, the class, we're going to look at a flip chart and we're going to look at ways that the text is coming to an end. How do we know the writer is wrapping it up? How does the reader know this? We're going to look at some more example texts and we're going to say, is this the end paragraph? How do we know? What are the signposts? We're going to save ideas and we're going to reference them later in the lesson. The main part of the lesson. We're going to use the lesson PowerPoint again. We're going to discuss how to write a conclusion. We're going to talk about why it's important. We're going to recap the things that I've said. And we're really going to discuss how to structure a conclusion. We're going to shared write a conclusion together. Take ideas from the class, the teacher writes, the class tell them what they want the conclusion to say. This is a really important part of the lesson because they are practicing writing without having to actually do it. And they're getting used to the structure. Send the class to work individually on writing their paragraphs, their conclusion paragraphs. As a plenary, have the children put all parts of their draft together. The introduction, the body of the text they've made, and the conclusion. They're creating a full text now. They've done it separately in parts, but they've written a full text and it should work well together. There may be bits that need tweaking. Have them read the text through to themselves to see how they feel about their work. The resources for this lesson are a PowerPoint and a writing frame. So in week 3, lesson 3, we move into phase 3, the editing phase. Now, this is where they revise their work. So as a starter, using a dictionary, have them choose 2 words from their own work and see if they can work with partners and find a better word to use. Make suggestions to their partners and explain why they think their word would be better. This is a really nice starter because it gets them to think about how to change text that isn't their own, which is nice to do. In the main part of the lesson, there's a lesson PowerPoint again, where you can explain the differences between revising work and editing work. Explain that both are important, and the reason that we revise first is that editing comes later. Editing just fixing things. Revising is when you actually improve the text. Work as a class and list things that they can look for in their text to revise it. You can use the PowerPoint to support this. I give the children revision checklists, again these included in my pack, and encourage them to revise their work. As a plenary, ask volunteers to talk about the changes they made to their work. Have them discuss what they did and why they think it's better. Discuss with the class how important it is to continuously work on your writing. And it's never just written and done. You really have to work at it. As we move into lesson 4, which is in phase 3, our final phase, we now edit the work. So the starter for this lesson is a look again at an example text, but this text has errors. And you're going to work together as a class or independently if you prefer, and they mark the errors and change the things. Remind the children how easy it is to miss these things, especially if you've written it yourself, because you're used to the words. For the main part of the lesson, use the lesson PowerPoint, talk about ways to edit our writing. Look at the examples in the PowerPoint and find the errors. Give children time to think about how they're going to do this. Use the editing checklists and let them edit their work. For a plenary, children can work with partners, swap work, and they're using their checklists and look for the errors as well. The resources for this lesson include the text with errors, the answers to that, editing checklist for them to work from, and a PowerPoint. Lesson 5 is our last lesson. It's in the 3rd week, in the 3rd phase, and this is presenting our work and reviewing it. I really like to do this at the end of a unit because they've written their work, they've edited it, they've revised it, they've polished it, they've made this amazing piece of text, and then it just moved on to the next thing. It's important to give them a reason for having done this. So as a starter, allow time for the class, for children to rewrite any little bits, prepare for their presentation. The starter can go on quite long because they need to prepare. It's not a quick thing. Then in the main lesson, discuss with the class the importance of being kind. How to give nice feedback. You can make a flip chart of helpful feedback and unhelpful feedback. In the resource pack there's an example of this. And then give the class time to present their work and review each other's texts. They can use a feedback form, which also provided, and they can look at that and they can think about how they will do it. As a plenary, they're going to share feedback forms and they give the children time to talk to the reviewer and say how they felt it went and ask for any clarification you might have. And that's it. That's how you can teach a complete unit on opinion writing. Now, I've shown examples in this video of the different texts. However, if you are interested in having everything done for you, I've got a complete pack of resources with all the example texts, the PowerPoints, and the exercises and the grammar worksheets and the structure and the writing frames. Everything's included. I will put a link for that. You can have these plans for free. I will put a link for those as well. So, I hope that you enjoyed this video and I will see you soon.